Hi everyone. In this tutorial series, we're going to go through the material from Chapter 5, which looks at resource development in Canada. So we're going to answer 3 questions, and we're going to do that in 3 different videos. So the 3 questions are: what factors or what things need to be considered when determining how a resource might be used? How are decisions made about the development of Canadian natural resources? And how feasible or how doable is it to use more renewable and non-renewable natural resources? So let's get into it. So this is part 1 of 3. So what needs to be considered when determining how a resource might be used? Some of Canada's resources remain unused. Rich deposits of minerals are left undisturbed. Some forests are not harvested, and much of our water flows freely to the oceans. So you might be thinking, well, why is it? We know Canada is quite rich in lots of different natural resources. What might make us not harvest those resources, not use them? Let's look at some things that you have to consider before you decide to develop a resource. So first one is global prices. We have a graph here, looks at the price of copper and how it through the years goes up and down. Even throughout months within a year, it goes up and down. And so when we're trying to decide whether to mine a natural resource, for example, if we're mining it, we have to think about, well, how much money is it going to make? If the world isn't demanding a certain product, then maybe it costs too much to extract it and the profit isn't large enough. So the global price of a resource is determined by demand and also how much of it is available, of course. If there's not a lot available, then it becomes more pricey and more valuable. So that's one thing to consider. Second one is production costs. So these are costs that are necessary to harvest or extract the natural resources and also manufacture items from them so that they're actually usable for people. So that would include costs of the factories that need to be constructed in order to make the product, cost of machinery within the factory that has to be built or purchased, and also the amount of people that are needed to produce the item. Production costs for natural resources also include the expenses to get the rights. So sometimes you have to pay to be able to mine something or to extract something. So all of these are included underneath production costs. Then you have to be able to move that product to where it needs to go. So sometimes it's extracted and then it has to move to the processing plant or the manufacturing plant, and then it has to be shipped to where it's sold. So all of these transportation costs are included in this consideration. So once the resources are extracted, they must be shipped to processing plants or factories that turn them into finished consumer goods. So in most cases, this is in bulk. Pipelines, ships, rail cars are all included in this. Number 4 is the fact that, well, not all resources are available throughout Canada equally. The distribution changes. So their locations have an important effect on their production and transportation costs. So this is a bit of repeat from earlier considerations. But we have an example here from Alberta where even the climate, even the seasonal changes determined whether a certain resource was available. And we're looking at farming here specifically. The precipitation changed. They didn't get very much precipitation in 2011, 2012. And so that affects whether a certain resource is available as well, and how well the agriculture industry was doing at the time. Another consideration, another thing to think about, again, the climatic conditions. This is more specific then. Again, Alberta is in the rain shadow because it's right near the Western Cordillera. And so we talked about rain shadow and the relief precipitation in the unit that we just finished a couple weeks ago. So these conditions have several effects. Forest fires are common. Fish species are threatened by lower water levels or poor quality, and municipal or city water supplies decrease. And so all of this ends up affecting industry. And so that's something else to consider when we're trying to determine whether a resource should be developed or what kind of industries should be supported that are going to do well. Another example, not just farming in Alberta, but mining in the north is another important Canadian example. Canada had 4 diamond mines in production in 2014. In production just means they were actively working. And all 4 are in parts of Canada that until recently have seen relatively little mineral development. And you can think about why. The map shows where these mines are. They're very far up north. And if you remember our physical geography unit, you know a little bit about what the north is like, and the fact that if you have to dig into the ground and the ground is frozen and it's hard to even get there, get all of your mining equipment there in the first place, that becomes a real challenge. So here you go. Canadian diamond mines face huge hurdles because of their isolation. It's too difficult to build roads over permafrost of northern Canada, and materials must be hauled overland and ice roads or frozen rivers for the 6 to 10 weeks a year when conditions permit. So that's a really small window of opportunity that these mining companies have to be able to mine for diamonds. All right, that concludes the first part of this Chapter 5 series of videos. Once you're done answering the questions, then you can head to the next video.